Hey, welcome to another great edition of Mississippi Stories. I am your host, Marshall Ramsey. I'm the editor at large and editorial cartoonist for Mississippi Today. And I want to thank the University of Mississippi Medical Center for sponsoring today's episode. And of course, we'll tell you a little bit more about them at the end of the episode. But first, I'd like to tell you a little bit about a friend of mine and somebody who I really admire because of his incredible talent. I would say he's a Renaissance man, but I'm not going to blow up his ego that much at the beginning of the interview, but pretty darn close. And I love this quote. This is from Cashbox Music Reviews. He said, "There are harmonica players, and then there's Scott Albert Johnson. He's one of the best harp players in the world." Now, I'm glad they threw that second sentence in there, because if it was just there are harmonica players and then there's Scott Albert Johnson, that probably wouldn't have been as good of a comment. But that's an amazing thing to read about yourself as well. He was born in St. Louis and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, where he grew up and then traveled around the world. And Scott, I'll be honest with you, before we get started, I'm going to read off a list of where all you've lived. This is according to Facebook, because everything's true on Facebook. So you're born in St. Louis, you moved here, you were in Cambridge, Massachusetts, you were in Washington, D.C., you were in New York, New York, Stanford, Connecticut, Columbus, Ohio, San Diego, California, Los Angeles, California, Sperryville, Virginia, and Jackson, Mississippi. Were you running from the mob?
Marty Bird and I have a little deal in the Ozarks that I was trying to keep on the down low, but I guess we'll go ahead and tell the world. Yeah, and I also lived in Alabama for a couple of years when I was a little kid.
Oh wow!
I don't know if you said DC. I lived in DC.
Yeah, I threw that in there.
Yeah. I moved around a lot for the first 33 years of my life, and then
you sunk some big old deep roots here in Mississippi.
Exactly. And, I always say that the two best decisions of my life were leaving Mississippi and coming back.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way.
Well, let's talk about that for 2 seconds, because there's so much talk about brain drain. And I mean, my kids are a little bit ahead of yours, but your kids are about the same age. My kids are thinking about, moving out of Mississippi for careers. They're looking around and so forth. And you kind of did that too. You're like, hey, I'm going to go to DC. I'm going to be in the game. You of course, you went to Harvard and then Columbia. I mean, come on, seriously. You're making me feel a little bit stupid here. Actually, I do that myself. But I mean, seriously, what was it about Mississippi that brought you back?
Well, so it was 2002 it was 2002 when I started thinking about it.
Yeah.
And about a year to kind of really come to terms with, partly to even realize I was thinking about it, and then to grapple with this thing that I never really thought I would come back. But I had been back into doing music for a couple of years, doing it on, I would say, an increasingly serious level.
Yeah.
After really mostly not doing it during my 20s. And, I thought it was just going to be a lark, and then it became much more than that pretty quickly. And I started thinking that I wanted to move somewhere where I could really immerse myself in the music more, someplace with a lower cost of living, someplace where I could really kind of throw myself into it. And what I thought was that I would come home and kind of regroup and get involved in music here, because the talent level, I already knew the talent level here was very high, especially for a place this size. I thought I would come back for a while, get my chops up, as they say in the music world, and maybe get my savings account up a little bit too, and also spend time with my parents. I hadn't lived within 1,000 miles of my parents for 15 years at that point, and I'm really glad I did that, because I got 13 years with my mom before she passed, and my dad's still around. But anyway, I thought I'd be here for maybe 6 months to a year, and then head on down either to New Orleans or to Austin or someplace like that, maybe Nashville, or maybe even out to LA. I didn't really know, but someplace where, I thought would be more of an industry town, I guess, as they say. But a few things happened. Number one, I got together with my wife about a month after I moved back. So that was obviously a big part of it. But she was, very open to going somewhere else. And we thought about it. But I also started going down to New Orleans a lot and playing down there a lot anyway, even though I didn't live there, because it's close enough to do that. And I was playing all the time here very quickly. I joined the band of Jesse Robinson, legendary blues and jazz guitar player from here, within a few weeks of being back, and had a real memorable trip with him and the rest of the band up to New York to play in the Mississippi Picnic in Central Park that spring. So I kind of got really into it, and things were developing. I was starting to get a little bit of a name around here and a little bit beyond here. And then my wife and I got married, and
17 years coming up, by the way. Congratulations.
That's right. May 28th, it'll be 17 years.
See, I thought I'd remind you just in case.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's on the inside of my ring, so I know.
Right, yeah, I might have to
not your date, my date.
Valet or something. But no, I should be your valet. But we were thinking about going to New Orleans. We were thinking, because my wife is a really excellent photographer, and she was more active in that then than she is now, but really good. And we thought, well, that would be a really good destination for two creative people. And then Katrina hit 2 weeks before our first child, Charlie, was born, and it just obviously was not the time to do it. And we stayed here, and we liked it here. I mean, we love the community. We live in Fondren. We still do. We've been in Fondren now for longer than we've been married. And we love the creative community here. We love the people in Jackson, and in the Jackson area. And so, we built a life here. And that's not to say we wouldn't go somewhere else in the future to try another adventure, but it wouldn't be because of, because we don't like the people here or anything like that. It might be just because it's time for another adventure, but we're not there yet. We're still here, and we still really treasure being a part of the community here.
I completely understand that. I mean, I had an opportunity to leave in 2007 to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is a fine enough town. I mean, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with Tulsa whatsoever, but there's a certain degree of between the relationships you can have with other artists and musicians and writers here that you really can't get anywhere else. And of course, for what I do and what you do, there is a lot of fertile ground to till, to say the least. I completely understand where you're coming from on that. It's a good place to do what we do.
I think so. And I mean, I think artists, people who call themselves artists or musicians, whatever,
I know. Yeah.
It's an uphill battle just about anywhere to sort of feel like you are taken seriously as a person, right, and to have the respect for what you do. But I think the slope is a little less uphill here. I think that artists, music is such an integral part of the culture and the history of this place, and so is for that matter literature and writing and art, the art that's come out of here, including yours. It's a high on the creative class scale here, and I think that's made it a little easier to feel like you're a part of something doing what we do.
Well, it's nice too. I mean, like I said, you can have that local touch that we have, but then you can do stuff on the national stage. May 27th, 2017, which seems like about 550 years ago now, in pandemic time. But I mean, you literally stood on the stage in Boston with the Boston Pops and got to perform on a national stage. You're sitting there singing and playing What a Wonderful World, which was absolutely fantastic. And I'll put a link to that in the comments. I mean, in this comment section on this video. But I mean, and one thing I've discovered about Mississippi is people are so incredibly proud of you when you do things like that on the national stage.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool too.
I think so. I don't know if you've ever heard of the tall poppy syndrome in Australia.
Yeah.
And I don't know how true it is, but there's sort of a legend that, the tall poppy gets pulled back down by the other poppies because they don't want to see him grow too high. I don't get that. And especially I got to give a shout out to the musical community here. It is one of the true joys of my life to have come back here and have been so accepted. And I mean, I have friends among the musicians in Jackson, and not just the musicians, but the music lovers, the people who really, really, support it. That, I mean, it puts a smile on my face just thinking about it. I played a festival down in Crystal Springs a few few weeks ago with Chalmers Davis.
I'm about to say he's like your brother from another mother.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
like an old married couple at this point.
Yeah, you really are.
I mean, you should. The car rides are really funny, but Jason Bailey from the Bailey Brothers was playing with Brad Carter and Will Weathersby backing him up, and I mean, those guys are all friends of mine, and I see them, and it's just like big hug, big smile, catching up, and it's been a little while since I've seen those guys, not too long, but that kind of thing. You really feel like you're a family. And if there is any competition, I mean, I guess maybe there is, but it's about the most good-natured version of that you can have. And to me, that's the way it should be. I mean, I don't think it should be a competition. I think, taking joy in what your friends produce and put out there, I think it makes it better.
Yeah, I think you just completely nailed about what I love about Mississippi is because, everybody that does what we do are, number one, they're very accessible, but it seems like they really do honestly cheer for you. And, you talk about the competition. I know, like, if you probably play a gig and they ask you, well, who else could come do this gig at another time? You would probably gladly recommend every single performer in Mississippi to do that.
Yeah. Happens all the time. I'm on both ends of that very frequently. And, it's just fun, I mean, this is not, life's too short.
Right.
I mean, it's like, we're not curing cancer over here. I do think the arts are very important. But that doesn't, there's this saying about people that, they take what they do seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously.
Right.
I mean, I don't know if I aspire to be like that because I think, I do take pride in what I do and I want it to be the best I can make it. But then when I'm done, I still need to go empty the dishwasher and I still got, I mean, it's just, what's the big deal?
That's why you got married and have 3 kids to keep you humble.
Oh, and they take that responsibility very seriously. I assure you.
I know you mentioned Charlie. I can't believe he's already looking at colleges, and both you and your wife are both in the college kind of world in the sense that you help high school kids and she's in the college end of things. Yeah. And that's got to be weird actually trying to help your own son now. You realize, okay, time has gone by really quickly. I mean, mine just graduated literally 2 weeks ago and my first kid did. And I'm like, I know. I was like,
from the honors college at Ole Miss, right?
Yeah. He did really well. Takes after his mother, thank God. So he's got hope.
Y'all got both sides of the brain going in that couple, I guess, right?
I think so. Yeah. Well, she's an art teacher, so she's
I don't
pretty
think I
amazing.
realized that, or I forgot.
Yeah, she teaches K-2, and I mean she could teach a penguin to fly. So
well, I'll tell you, teaching art or teaching music, I teach harmonica. I actually taught a songwriting class.
I really need to take your class, by the way.
Well,
I really do. No, I really will. I mean, I'm now, since I got you here on this interview, I was like, because I have dabbled with it, like the dark arts for 25, 30 years, and it's like,
I've heard you play. You
and some are right. Yeah. My dog hates it.
So does mine.
Yeah. And so does my family too, come to think of it. But
one of our past dogs who is no longer with us, sadly, his name was
because of the harmonica.
He lasted a while, so we named him Cash because we found him the day Johnny Cash died, and he died one day short of 13 years to the day.
That's pretty good for him. Yeah, that's pretty good for a dog.
Yeah, he was a wonderful guy, and but I would play the harmonica and he would just start howling, and we could never figure out if he was singing along or expressing his displeasure. I feel like he was singing because he would stay in the room. He wouldn't run away. So,
Well, it's really weird because I was playing you. I was playing you and Pip was just sitting there smiling and just all happy and her tail was wagging. And then if I do it, she literally does the same thing. She howls. So I think it's obviously me. I really do. And so, yeah. So no, I think it's a live thing, definitely on that. But no, I mean, I that would be kind of fun to actually take a class from you on that. But like I said, the fun thing about you is, I mean, you started out with violin when you were a kid, then you switched over to the bass and you discovered you could sing a little bit, which you're a very good singer. It's not like you started with harmonica and then you were up at Harvard kicking footballs barefooted. And
Yes.
which by the way, they make a really cool thing called cleats, just to let you know that.
I've got a
But
whole other story about that we can tell some other time, or how that happened.
okay. Oh,
yeah.
you're a Ray Guy aficionado, or what the deal? I mean,
Ray Guy was incredible.
yeah.
Do you want me to tell? I mean, I can tell the
We
story.
got time. Yeah, man, that's
Tell
what
the
we
quick
do
story.
here.
So I kicked with a shoe in high school, and then I got
Okay.
to Harvard. And when I was playing at the time, they had a separate program for freshmen. Freshmen couldn't play on the varsity. There was a freshman team with a 6-game schedule. It was an Ivy League rule. And then sophomore year, you moved up to the varsity. I had a really good season freshman year. It was looking like I was going to have a good chance of being the starter on the varsity as a sophomore. And then in the off season, the NCAA banned that little plastic block that holder could put on to.
So it lowered the football. Yeah.
Right. So now you had to kick it off the ground like they've done in the NFL since time immemorial. So all of a sudden I had to do that, and I couldn't do it. I have a size 12 foot, and I could not get under the ball. And I couldn't even consistently kick an extra point. It was awful. So I was relegated as a sophomore to kickoffs, and I was leaning toward quitting at the end of that season. I was like, well, this is just not going to work. I'll have to find something else to do. So we were playing Princeton on national TV, and I get down to my locker room, and my locker had been broken into. And they had taken a whole bunch of stuff, including my St. Andrews letter jacket was gone, which I don't know why they would take that. And a few other little knickknacks, and my kicking shoe. So one of my roommates was on the soccer team. And so I found him in the locker room because they were getting ready for a game. I said, do you have an extra extra right shoe I can borrow? And he had an Adidas soccer cleat he'd let me use, but I had to give it back after the game. And on Monday at practice, I didn't have a kicking shoe. So we didn't do much kicking on Mondays anyway. And the field it had rained all weekend and a lot the previous week. So the practice field was in bad shape. So I was just kind of standing around. And finally I said to my buddy, who had been my holder on the freshman team, said, I'm bored. I think I might try to kick a few barefoot just to see what happens. He said, okay. So we go off to there was another practice field next to the one where everyone was doing their stuff. I started at 30 yards, boom. Moved out to 35, boom. 40, boom. 42, 44, 46, 48, 50, 52. And then I missed either from 54 or 56. I can't remember. And as this is happening, he and I just start looking at each other like, what is happening here? So at the end of practice, I went over to our head coach, Joe Restick, who was a wonderful guy. And I said, Coach, this may sound crazy, but I think I'm going to start kicking barefoot. I don't know if you noticed, but I was just kicking in practice, and I think I might have solved my problems here. And he said, well, guys have done it before. If it's working for you, give it a shot. Why not? And that night I called my folks, and my folks didn't know that this was a thing that you wanted to ever kick barefoot. And they were just like, you can't do that. And my mom, I'll never forget, said, they're going to think that poor kid from Mississippi can only afford one shoe. I said, Mom, that's not the case. And it saved my career. I ended up having a pretty good career after that. And I worked, my work study job was in the Harvard Sports Information Department. And in the winter of my junior year, I'd already had one full season where I was, kicking field goals, and I'd almost broken the single season field goal record for the school, missed by one. But so I came in for work one day, and my boss said, there's a package for you. And he was kind of grinning, and everyone in the office was grinning. So I go over and I find this package, and it had already been opened, and it was addressed to the Barefoot Kicker Harvard football office. And I opened it up, and there's this letter. It said, "My dear young man, I saw you play in Philadelphia at the Harvard, Pennsylvania football game in November. And it was raining, and it was a nasty day. And every time you walk on the field, you only had one shoe on. And you seem like such a nice young man, but if this is a habit, your foot must get very cold and your mother must worry. So I'm enclosing this wool cozy that my relative Essie has knitted for you. It was this crimson sock with white laces, wool sock, beautiful wool sock. She said, if you are diligent in wearing this sock, you'll always be ready to do battle for the crimson, especially against those ruffians from New Haven. And it was from, her name was Merle Duncan Herman. She was the president of the Harvard Club of Philadelphia. And Boston Globe ran a little story on it. I never actually used it because I didn't want to mess it up. I didn't want to get it dirty. I still have it somewhere. But, if it hadn't been for that little thing that happened, I mean, I would have, the rest of my college life would have been very different. And I would be looking back on a different set of memories. So you never know how things are going to go.
But think about it. I mean, here you had this setback, right? Obviously somebody ripped off your stuff, and that could have ended your career. I mean, literally, but in a way, it turned out making you better. And it's just, I mean, you think about all the things that have happened to you musically, and you and I talked during the pandemic. Obviously, when suddenly you can't get in front of a stage full or a room full of people, that tends to crimp your style. When you're a musician who depends on that for a living. Think about that. I mean, tell us about some of the challenges that you've had in your career that you feel like have made you better and have made you stronger, kind of like that kicking story.
That's a great question. Well, so for one thing, I'm a harmonica player who doesn't really primarily play blues, or at least, I mean, I've played plenty of blues, but, and there's blues in what I do for sure.
Right.
But, I'm really more of a rock influenced songwriter for sure, and singer. And that's really kind of what I gravitate towards. Child of the 80s. So I'm a big Peter Gabriel fan, big Police fan, big Rush fan. And, Zeppelin, of course, and, and wide range of acts. And of course, I like a lot of blues and jazz musicians as well. Mm-hmm. So doing something that, I never really wanted to copy or be like, try to duplicate a song the way the original artist did it. I mean, I just, for better or for worse, I kind of always had my own way of doing things musically, which I think has probably served me better in the long run. But in the short term, when you're trying to get gigs, that can be a challenge just on its face. And then the fact that I play harmonica and not frankly, not everybody likes harmonica, and with good reason. I mean, there's a friend of mine who passed away about 10 years ago, but a really great harmonica player named Chris McCallick, who is from Minnesota and was very well known in the harmonica world and very sort of blunt. He was a real advocate for musicianship. And he used to say, most harmonica players are terrible musicians. And I wouldn't put it that way.
Yeah.
But what he meant was, a lot of guys or women or whatever, harmonica is a very easy instrument to pick up and start making a sound. Right.
Right.
And I think that's great, actually. I think it's they call it the people's instrument. Some people do. And I think that's a really great thing. But what he meant was a lot of people do that and then they say, okay, now I'm a musician. And the end result is frankly, a lot of music that rubs some people the wrong way. I feel like I approached the instrument the same way I approached the bass, and the same way I approached singing and the guitar, although I was more of a latecomer to that instrument. But you want to make something that sounds good first to yourself, and then hopefully other people. So I don't know if those are obstacles as much as they are, a set of conditions that you have that kind of make me and my music kind of what they are. And then you hope someone is going to like what you do enough to hire you to do it. Over time, I through sheer stubbornness and persistence, I was able to kind of develop something that I felt like enough people liked that I could get gigs and people would hire me and people would listen to my music and buy my CDs. And you remember CDs.
Oh yeah, those are cool.
Yeah,
they're real shiny and they make good coasters.
They're great coasters. Yeah. And you add that to just the obstacles that I think every musician
Right.
faces and faces increasingly in this day of streaming music, and not just Spotify and all that, but also for that matter, Netflix, Hulu, and Apple Plus and Disney Channel. All those things are competing for the attention of people who might otherwise go hear a band. And it makes it hard for everyone. I mean, I mean, 2010, 2011, I was playing probably on average 150 to 175 gigs a year.
Wow.
And I was traveling some for that. But really, I mean, the majority of it was right here in Jackson.
Yeah.
That's not really doable now. Not for me, at least.
How come?
There just aren't as many gigs.
There's just not big gigs. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, there's some, and I've got some of them, and so do my compadres out there. But there's definitely a smaller pie, and but this is not just a streaming phenomenon. I talked to Chalmers or Rafael Sims, who I'm sure who's these guys who have been doing it for longer than I have. That were playing music around here in the 70s. They'll tell you they could play every night of the week if they wanted to, make $100, $125, $150 a night in 1975 dollars. They can make a living. They can make a real living playing as a local musician. And that is not really very doable, for at least not nearly on the same level nowadays. So it's nobody's fault. It's the march of technology and the march of just the way things are. But it can make it challenging. And I just feel like at the end of the day, I started out as a music fan, right? Yeah. I played Suzuki violin before I really knew who Led Zeppelin was, but I'm almost not counting that. But like when someone handed me a bass in the 9th grade, and then 5 minutes later, a friend walks up to me and says, "Hey, I've got a band. We got a gig next week. Can you play?" I'm like, well, you're going to have to teach me how to play the bass first. I was a fan before I was in a band. And I started out just like, going to the grocery store and seeing if I could find Hit Parader magazine so I could see if there was an article about the Police, like I did that. Like I was that dork, right? And I still am that dork on a certain level. And when it comes to making the music, I'm a fan of making the music. I'm a fan of being creative and producing something I can say, okay, I did that.
Yeah. And
that is what sustains me, is that love of doing it more than anything. There's the old joke in the music business, I play music for free. You pay me to haul the gear, set it up, break it back down, put it back in my car, promote the get, that's what you're really paying me for. I probably shouldn't say that on a public forum because it might drive my price down, but it's true.
Right.
The music is, there's a connection there that it provides for me with the universe, with God, with my fellow human beings, with my family, all of that. And it's been the soundtrack for my life. And that's, I think if one holds on to that, it makes it easier to deal with the frustrations of the business of trying to do it.
That's right.
Now you can't necessarily eat that satisfaction, but right. I do other things that help me eat and feed my family. So,
I think you touched on something really important. And of course, the newspaper business obviously was affected by the internet, just like the music business was. It completely blew up the model on what we do. I mean, it used to be, like for me as a cartoonist, you get discovered and then you climb your way up the ranks and get paid a lot of money because there were only, 100 new cartoonists in the world. Well, guess what? Now, you can see memes for free all day long, and so that, I think it hit me. I'm trying to think when it was. It was when the wheels started coming off. I got invited to go speak in Houston, Texas at the Texas Press Association, and it was at the Galleria Mall. Right. Well, as you know, retail, everything you could have bought in that mall, you could have gotten for half off on your phone, at whatever online site on that. But when you walked into every one of those stores, they engaged all five of your senses because all those stores created an experience.
Right.
And I think that's when I realized that if you're an artist, and I mean artist as in a musician or a writer or anybody that's in the creative world, you've got to create an experience for the customer, whether it's hauling in that equipment and doing it on time when you promise, and making. And I struggle with that. I admit I'm really good on the right brain stuff. The left brain stuff I have to work at a little bit. But I think you and I both live in a world now where there is so much competition that we have to create and do a way to lift ourselves up. And I think you do that not only with your musicianship, it's really good. And obviously your personality, you're a good entertainer. You have people that love you and what you do. And I mean, Beth Elliott, for instance, Beth, I'll give you a shout out here if you watch this interview.
Hey,
My first thing I posted on my Facebook page, boom, literally within 30 seconds about how much she loved you. So
Beth, by the way, Beth is when I was talking about music supporters in this town, she has a catchphrase that we always say to each other. She'll say, "I love the music in this town."
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I think of when I think of Beth. So
yeah, oh no, it's just a rock star. And also think about your lyrics and when in the midst of the pandemic and your song, I think about your lyrics here. Stranger times I've not seen, think of you, just what I mean. Something's missing from this present day. Someone's taken everything away in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, it was a really incredibly deep song. So, I mean, you're not just really good at being able to get on stage and play an instrument really well and to be able to create an experience. There's a lot of depth to what you're putting out there too. And it really does reflect kind of who you are. And of course, it doesn't hurt that you went to Harvard, obviously, and got a political science degree. And then you went to, why did you get a journalism master's? I'm just kind of curious about that. What caused you to do that?
That's interesting. So, thank you for all the kind words, by the way.
Okay. Well, I'll take it all back now. Okay.
I had a professor named Louis Masur, Masur, who's now a professor at Rutgers.
Yeah.
And he and I just reconnected recently. Great guy.
Oh, cool. Mm-hmm.
I took a class from him my last semester of college called The Conception of the Self in American Literature. And it was a little seminar class, like 4 or 5 students, something like that. And I had a spotty academic career because my attention was elsewhere, but I really enjoyed that class. And I think I did, pretty well in it. And the final paper I wrote about my grandfather passed away that winter, and he had always told us lots of stories about when he was growing up. He was born in 1915 in Mississippi and had a chance to go to college. Someone was going to pay for it, and he didn't go because he didn't have anything to wear. I mean, it was one of these type
of
rock contour kind of guys. And there was an album that had come out by Robbie Robertson from the band. Called Storyville that I had just come out like a year before that, and I'd really fallen in love with it, and it really kind of got me through my grandfather dying and some other kind of tough times of like finishing college and not knowing what you want to do with your life and reflecting on things at the ripe old age of 20, 21, 22. And so I wrote a paper about that album, but I connected it to my grandfather and the storytelling sort of tradition, and the album was called Storyville. And I wrote this paper on it. It probably is at my parents' house somewhere still, but he gave me a good grade on it, and he wrote on there, writing is something you should think about continuing with. And it was one of the few times in college where a professor and I had made that kind of connection, and where where their words had really stayed with me. So I thought, well, I don't know what I'm good at, but I guess I'm kind of have some natural ability at this. I should try to find a way to, maybe make that work. And I'd always been very interested in politics and the news and in journalism. And I'd really always admired journalists. I've never understood the disdain for journalists. It just, and that's a whole nother topic, I guess. But,
right.
But so I went to Columbia Journalism School, and it was a great experience. And I did do journalism for a while. I didn't really have the passion though to do that. I have the utmost respect for it, and I knew that I just realized I couldn't do that in the way I thought it should be done over the course of a career. Now I have friends from my class who, One's the executive producer of Frontline, another is the executive producer of Vice News. People, just done really everything you can think of in that business. I know some of those people and I really admire them. But and it's funny, we were talking about the changes in journalism. I remember Stephen Levy, who's written for Newsweek and a bunch of other people, came to one of my classes, and Roger Rosenblatt was the professor for that class. And Roger asked Stephen, this was when the internet was first kind of starting to be a thing, 94, 95. And he said, he asked Stephen Levy, do you think it's a bigger deal than Gutenberg and the invention of movable type? Stephen Levy thought about it for a second. He said, no, but it's an extremely close second.
Wow.
And just, this was when those things were starting to change, and the winds of change were blowing really hard. And there were a lot of scared people in the journalism business. And, but I gotta say, the things I learned at that school, but also just being sort of in that world for a few years afterward, and both the things I was doing and keeping up with the things that my classmates were doing. I still use those skills definitely as a songwriter, as an observer. I do a lot of things outside of that part of my life that involve communication and writing and being able to grasp a situation and communicate something about that situation that is valuable to somebody. Even getting beyond like the working world, I just think in terms of the way I experience the world and interact with it, was definitely informed by the sort of, journalistic mindset. And so when I write a song, they're all different, and some are more personal than others, but they all involve, okay, how am I going to take this thing I'm thinking or feeling, this idea I have, and turn it into something that works? And it's kind of like, solving a puzzle in a way, solving a puzzle that you yourself have created. And I don't know, I'm kind of rambling now, but it all in a weird way kind of fits together for me. And that's partly also my tendency to kind of say, I don't believe in regrets exactly. I do believe in looking back and trying to make sense of things or come to terms with things. But, for every mistake I made in my 20s, and boy, was there a long, long list. Those mistakes led me to my wife, which led me to our kids, which led me to all these friends I've made here. So it's hard to regret those things. They need a new word for I guess, for that.
Yeah. I always say, well, we're still vertical.
Yeah. More or less.
More or less. Yeah.
I know you can relate. I'm so sorry about some of that stuff, but
it's that's the thing. And that's what the last couple of years, it was like literally the virus. And of course, I was lucky to have some medical stuff too, but it made the world small, and in a way that was good because, my whole life I've chased after dreams, and I know you've done the same things. And in a way, you suddenly you start noticing the world within a certain radius of you, and you realize, no, I need some work. I need to do some work on what I got going on around me a little bit. And, as bad as the pandemic was, and it's easy to, obviously I lost friends, you did too. And I lost friends to the disease, and I lost friends to the opinions of the disease. It was sad on both levels, but, I feel like that we're all kind of coming out of this a little bit wiser and a little bit stronger. At least I hope so.
I hope so.
And I'm tired. You're probably tired too. I think we're all just kind of like, bleh.
Yeah, I think it depends on the day. I think we're going to get past the pandemic, in one form or another. But when I wrote that song, Float, and I said, something's missing from this present day, someone's taking everything away. I really wasn't just talking about the pandemic, as I think you probably know. There's, and not to get overly, political one way or the other. But it's not even just about politics in the traditional sense to me. There's something wrong with the way our society works right now. And
it's literally like somebody has figured out that it's very powerful to tickle our amygdala instead of engaging our frontal cortex.
Yes.
And so it's like everything.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, everything's out there trying to make us scared and fear. And, now we're in a post-fact world where, you can get your own journalism depending on what your viewpoint is. And I say journalism with air quotes and so it's a really tough situation right now, because you and I can literally have a conversation and come at it from two different points of view and not have separate facts. And how are you ever going to come to any kind of agreement, and which is kind of a problem when you live in the United States of America, if you're not united on what the facts are. But so, no, I totally get it.
Right. Yeah. I had a really, I look back at this conversation I had with one of my friends from here in Jackson, who had gone away and had all but finished his PhD in philosophy at Northwestern. He and at the time that's what he was doing. And meanwhile, I'm out of journalism school. I'm super optimistic and idealistic about the internet and new media and many-to-many communication and the prospects, the democratization of information. And he was very cynical about it. He was like, I think what we're going to see is fragmentation into little islands, and I'm not so optimistic. And we had this debate about it. And now I guess that was 25 years ago. And now I've kind of lean in a lot of ways more toward his position that he had back then. And he abandoned academia and is the CEO of a digital marketing company.
Really?
So, and the funny thing is, I don't think he's changed his opinion at all. He just kind of
figured out how to cash in on it.
Right. And yes. And he's, embrace instead of resist, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, I read a book in the 90s talking about how, basically the digitization of content is going to blow up, everything from the music business to the journalism and everything else. In the 90s, I read that, and nobody paid any attention to it. It's just funny. So I was like, I really wish I had, kind of learned that lesson a long time ago. But in a way, I'm kind of glad I didn't, because I managed to still get to do what I do on that. But yeah, it is interesting. But you're right. It's fascinating just seeing how we live in our own little news bubbles now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Well, I think often about that. Francis Fukuyama, had that line about how we've reached the end of history, when the Cold War ended, and, capitalism is triumphant and democracy is triumphant. And even putting aside the debate about the politics of that and all that,
right.
I always thought, you can say it's the end of history. I think history may have other plans for us.
Right.
And I think we're going through that now. And I think it's going to be what it's going to be. This world is going to evolve. It's going to continue to evolve. I think beware of predictions about how things are going to turn out. And I think the best any of us can do is keep approaching each day with goodwill toward our fellow man and woman, and try to do the things we do the best we can, and try to have some compassion and some gratitude. And that's not going to fix everything, but I think it's honestly probably the best we've got. And, as things go forward with climate change, which, I am of the group that believes in the science, is going to have a lot of surprises for us as well, I believe. And, I worry for my kids, of course, not just with that, but with a lot of these things we're talking about. But I'm lucky that our kids are pretty sophisticated. They sort of get it. They get the world. They do a lot of their own sort of research about things, and they have opinions which they're not afraid to back up, and they're getting better and better at it.
Yeah.
And that's our best hope. So that's where I'm putting my marbles.
Yeah, no, and that's I think that's a really smart way of looking at it, because otherwise you can almost end up in the fetal position.
Yeah. And I have a few times.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard not to. And that's really the beauty of being able to sit down and write a song, or to paint a painting or to draw a cartoon or do whatever. And that's the beauty of
Right.
art, is the fact that, allows us to almost do self-therapy, but to be able to express stuff that reaches other people and helps them along the way.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the 12-step program. You realize there's something bigger than yourself out there.
Right.
And then you'll be okay. That
Right.
sort of thing. A little bit, you talked about, you and I talked a little bit before we started. You have got a new guitar instrumental up on your Facebook page. It's called Invisible. It's fantastic. It was like, I knew you played guitar a little bit, but you have obviously come a long way since the last time I think I heard you play a guitar. So I was pretty impressive. Why do you enjoy playing the guitar? What does it bring to the mix that you probably were lacking before?
Well, and thank you for that, by the way. That's so I've got actually a single called Invisible that has words and is a full band.
Yeah. I haven't heard the single yet, so I do apologize for that.
Almost done with it.
Well, that could be why I haven't heard it.
Yeah, right. It's not out yet.
Okay. Yeah.
But no, I just did that last night. I recorded on my iPhone. I'm like, I'm actually not too upset with that one. So I put it out there. But why do I like guitar? Okay, so first of all, I think I was always a frustrated guitar player, honestly. I really songwriters and guitar players for me are and singers to some degree, if they wrote the song, I was drawn toward them. I've been a songwriter for a while. I've played guitar on a very basic level since I was in high school, but I never went any further with it until relatively recently.
You're good for 3 chords.
Yeah, I was good for maybe a little more than 3, but it was the transitions between the chords that was the difficult part. But I did start as a bass player, so I had that kind of fundamental underpinning of understanding the fretboard and all that. It's a few things. First of all, as much as I love playing harmonica and like to be able to do some of the things I can do with it, it's not the greatest songwriting tool. Not the type of songs I'm interested in writing. And so to be able to put chords together, and especially learning new voicings of those chords and really putting together a texture of a song and see it and see yourself kind of putting it together is really, really satisfying to me. Just playing the guitar, the better I get at it is very satisfying as well. I think I'm progressing further on the rhythm part than I am on the lead part, but that's probably normal. But also, and this is kind of a philosophy of creativity kind of thing. I think there is a lot of value when you've accomplished something on one thing to put yourself back into a situation where you're not as accomplished, where you've got to struggle a little more to make the things happen that you want to create. I think it keeps you sharp. I think it opens up pathways and builds connections in your brain and in your mind, I guess is a better way to put it, in your soul, whatever, that weren't necessarily there, or at least they hadn't been developed. And I've been telling Chalmers this, and I firmly believe this. In the time since I've really thrown myself back into the guitar, which has been maybe a year and a half, my harmonica playing's improved. I mean, it has led me to do things on harmonica to get out of familiar patterns and what I would call ruts.
Right.
Not completely. I still sometimes I'll play something. I think, oh, I've done that a million times. Why didn't I do something different? But I am doing it differently more often now because the wiring is different now. And I'm a big fan of the band Rush. As you probably know, which a lot of people will take or leave them, but I'm a huge admirer of their musicianship and their commitment to being the best they could be at everything they did. And the documentary about Rush, Beyond the Lighted Stage, there's a whole segment where they talk about Neil Peart, the drummer and the lyricist for Rush.
Yeah,
mid-90s, he's long been considered arguably the best rock drummer in the world. He went to a teacher, Freddie Gruber, and completely changed his technique, relearned he adopted a different grip on the snare. And the idea that he would do that at that stage in his career was so inspiring to me and still is. There's always something to learn. And there's always something to learn, even on your chosen instrument. I mean, I could play 500 more years, and there'll still be things I'll be figuring out on the harmonica. I could probably play 5,000 years, and there'll be things I'll be figuring out on the guitar, because I'm not a beginner. I mean, I'd say I'm an intermediate player, but like, there's so much room in there to learn new things, learn new chords, to learn new techniques for playing, using your pinky more than, I was working on that last night. Like, oh, wow, I can do this. I'm getting excited just talking about it, because it makes you feel like you're 15 again, and you've just been handed a bass guitar for the first time, and you're going to learn how to play "Should I Stay or Should I Go" by the Clash. I'm pretty sure that was the first song I learned to play in a band. And it's hard to recapture that feeling, but really throwing yourself into something new is the best way I've found for doing that. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but my wife will tell you, sometimes jokingly, sometimes not, I'll sit down with a guitar and an hour will pass, and I thought it was 5 minutes, and that's, I hope for everybody that and I would say, really, it's not just guitar, it's music in general. I mean, I feel that way about it. I wish for everyone that they have something in their life like that.
Well, it's flow. I mean, it's literally getting into flow.
Yeah.
And, I mean, you and I, because like, I was very similar. I mean, I've been a cartoonist since I was 2 years old. I've been drawing that type of drawing, line drawings, and I can do pen and ink about as well as anything I can do. Right. But I took a painting class, but I took a painting class, and I learned value, which is a totally different beast. And it totally changed how I drew my cartoons, because I no longer drew with line. I drew the value. Right. So, you're able to create. So I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're right. It does rewire your brain a little bit. And, when you talk about 2005, and you talk about the changing, and of course, at that point, the newspaper business started imploding, and the layoffs started in 2008 and continued for years and years and years and years. And I was terrified and doubled down. And then, I got made part-time, and suddenly I had, half my day and half my income gone. So I needed to go do something. And so I started doing radio, and I learned how to interview people. And then I and it was like
natural at that. I mean,
but I didn't know that until I got forced into it. And, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, you suddenly pick up a guitar and you start playing around with it. You're pretty darn, I mean, you say you're an intermediate, but to my ear, you're fantastic. And it's totally changed. It'll change your performing, your ability, because you can get up now on the stage and play guitar with some degree of confidence, and be able to create a whole new sound and all new music, which will entertain your fans. So you're not that performer that you go to his concert, 20 years later, and it's the same exact concert it was 20 years ago.
Well,
that's good.
Those are very, very kind words. I really appreciate it. I mean, and right back at you. I mean, I've been a huge fan of yours longer than I've known you personally, and so get to know you has been really so great. For when it comes to the music part and the guitar, and really anything I do, I mean, I've had the same regular duo partner for 11 years now. Over 11 years. Chalmers Davis, who fabulous,
is amazing.
Who played with Little Richard for 24 years, was a Muscle Shoals session man for a long time. Really honest, and is one of my best friends. And he's curmudgeonly, but he's a real good guy when you get right down to it. And he's just the greatest sounding board in a supportive way. I think at first when I started breaking the guitar out, he was like, "What's this about?" But pretty soon he was into it, because it freed him up to do a lot of things that, where if I'm keeping a rhythm while he can do a solo, it changes the way he approaches things. And I think he liked that. And just having him as a sounding board with his wealth of knowledge and experience, and the fact that we are we're a team. And of course I'll play with other people too, who are so many, they're all great, but we've just played together so much that having that there as a supportive sounding board to tell me, maybe when I'm going off the rails a little bit, I mean, it's very, very helpful.
Well, Scott, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I'm not just sitting here for an hour throwing praise your way. I'm coming at this as somebody who's in the creativity business, and I understand the demands of it and the threat of losing, obviously, the ability to come up with new ideas and everything else. And I think that's one of the true gifts of being in Mississippi, is that we have this community of people that, even though we are on different disciplines, we all, we're all in the same business of doing creativity for a living. And it's just, for me, it's fascinating talking to you, or whether it's Angie Thomas who writes, or, just you name anybody here in Mississippi that does what we do. And it's just fascinating hearing you switch an instrument just so that you can do neuroplasticity and change a little bit of wiring in your brain. I need to learn to talk, for instance. Maybe I should do read something. I don't know, but
maybe I should have explained that to my wife. Yeah, this is all about neuroplasticity, honey.
It's a great word. It really is. It sounds
really
so damn official. It really does. Oh yeah, I'm watching this because it's neuroplasticity. That's it. Yeah, that's definitely on that.
Just
but
trust it.
look, I've taken up a good chunk of your evening so far. But
I'm truly enjoying it. So don't.
Yeah, no, this has been a great conversation, and like I said, I'm a fan, but I like all the different aspects of what you do in your life and what you've been doing with your music. And you said you got a new single coming out. Tell us a little bit more. Are you going to do an album too? Or are you just going to put up a single, or what's going on?
So I'll eventually do an album. It'll probably be, a collection of singles, really. Something like that. And I've been doing a lot more of my own production. Float, right. I did all of my computer. Invisible, the new single, I'm doing all on my computer. Although I am letting my dear friend Randy Everett, who's won Grammys with Bobby Rush, and one of the greatest recording engineers anywhere, as far as I'm concerned, he's going to finish the mix for me, because it's a pretty dense mix. And once you start getting into Peter Gabriel production territory, I think it's probably better to turn it over to a real professional.
By the way, let's flip on Peter Gabriel for half a second. Salisbury Hill is one of the greatest songs ever for anybody who has a dream and wants to break away from the daily grind to be able to chase that dream.
Absolutely. So I can tell the backstory of that song. There's a lot of people don't know, which is that it's about him.
It's not just about talking Eagles.
You're right. Yeah. It's about him getting the courage to leave Genesis and what he went through to do that. And truly, I mean, he's in my.
It worked okay for both of them. Everything turned out okay, I think.
Yeah, I think, and I'm one of those. I like both versions of Genesis. I like Phil Collins too. I think he got a tremendously bad rap for a long time, but I think people are coming back around. But as far as the single goes, I'm hoping to have it out within the next month or two. The actual production part is going to be done hopefully within the next couple of weeks, and the mastering and all that, and then there's going to be a video, and I'll do a radio campaign and all that, and I've got to figure out when would be the best time to release it, but it's almost done, and I'll send it to you when it's done, for sure.
Yeah, good. I'll make sure that folks see it and hear it. And I'm about to say, it's always good to see music. It's always a good thing to do on that. I'm really just a man of words tonight. How can folks find out more about you?
They can find me on all social media. I actually, this is kind of embarrassing, but so of course I'm going to say it. I lost my domain, scottalbertjohnson.com. I slept.
I saw that. Yeah.
And so I now have scottalbertjohnsonmusic.com, while I consider whether it's worth trying to get the original domain back. But really the best way to find me is on Facebook and Instagram, really.
Yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with Facebook for all the typical reasons, but it seems to be the best way to kind of just easily promote what I'm doing, and Instagram too. I'm YouTube as well. I've got a YouTube channel, but I'll probably be more active with that as the single gets released. Or just just find me in Fondren somewhere.
Yeah, you're around. And I do hope to be able to get to see you live soon. I really do enjoy that. And now that we actually do such things, I hope that this next upcoming wave is toward the end of the waves.
I do too.
It's I'll keep getting my boosters
going on. You're raising these young men and doing your masterful work as well. So, I mean, it's a busy life, but
well, let me ask you about that. Cause just real quick. Cause I mean, like I said, you're incredibly busy. You've got the 9 to 5, which you're helping people, you're helping kids get get where they want to be and so forth. And you're busy. And I mean, like today, I was thinking about, I had a live event, I did a cartoon, I did a podcast. I've done this, I signed 48 books, it was a crazy day. And I used to just go in and draw one cartoon a day and go home. And it's so different, but in a way, and I worry about that. I always tell people, I said, I don't think my cartoons are as good as they used to be. And they're like, no, they're fine. And it's just amazing. You don't know what you're capable of, I guess, until you have to do it. And then you push yourself, but you're incredibly busy too. And do you ever feel like that, just that busyness might affect what you're doing? Or do you think it is actually an asset to be busy and to keep putting the work out?
That is a really great question. And it's something I have thought about. I don't know. I like being busy. I like doing things. I like playing a gig just for not just because I enjoy playing the music and connecting, but I think there's something in my head that says, I played a gig today, so I was productive, and if I did something else, in my school job or whatever, along with that, okay, I was really productive. And then if I also folded the laundry, okay, I did that too. And I sort of am the type of person who generally likes to be that way. Although I'll have my periods where I also kind of like to take afternoon naps. I guess I do wonder sometimes what it would be like if I could literally all day hole up in a recording studio and do that every day and see what comes out. In some ways, I think it would be better because I would have the bandwidth to really consider what I'm doing. But there's always a but. I also think that, and again, I keep citing Peter Gabriel, but he said this in an interview once, that one of the worst things you can do to an artist is give him complete freedom. Because then you just sort of meander. You second guess yourself more. You find it harder to kind of lock into, okay, the idea and how to develop the idea, because there's just too much time and space to fill. I don't know. I think it's probably, there's pros and cons to either. I also kind of feel like, and it's interesting you said that about your cartoons, how you feel like your cartoons used to be better. I don't think that about your cartoons, but I understand that feeling. I sort of look at my own music, looking back at, and like if I look at my first record, I mean, I'm definitely, just objectively, it's very clear I'm a better harmonica player now than I was then. So I don't judge those records by the harmonica playing, really. I judge that, or even by the production or the singing, because I think I've gotten better at those things too. I judge it more by like, okay, but was the idea good? And was the song, the underlying song, not the record, but the song, was it, am I still proud of that? And in most cases I am, and there are a few exceptions, I think, but I sort of view it like, and I view this, again, it goes back to like regrets and all that. Like this is a snapshot in time over here. Okay. This is another snapshot. My schedule is different. My life is different. I have 2 teenage sons and a preteen daughter that are the most important, along with my wife. Those are the most important things to me, no matter what. And as obsessed as I am with music, I don't have to think more than a millisecond about putting it down if I need to do something, for them. And that sounds like a humble brag, I guess, but I don't mean it like that.
No, I understand.
It's like a friend of mine said, that's just sort of organic. It's just sort of what happens. So I have thought about these things a lot, but I've sort of come to a place where I sort of give myself over to a little more acceptance, and like the serenity prayer, kind of control the things you can control and leave the rest. I don't know.
The serenity prayer is getting to be very it's getting more and more important as the days go on these days. When you turn on the news going, okay,
I sort of feel like it should replace E pluribus unum as our national
good
motto.
Lordy. But I think you touched on something, because I mean, the music that you create today has got a lot deeper well to draw from, because you have lived so much more life and you've seen much more. And I think the other thing to add to that is, and I know in my own situation, I used to think that being a cartoonist was my identity. And now I realize that anything I do is just my work, for instance, I'm not my work. My work is a reflection of who I am. And
Right.
so I've got to constantly work on myself so that I'm like good for my family, good for my employers, good for everything else. It's not a question of if I lose my job tomorrow, then I'm nobody, and that's an important thing. And I think you've got that figured out. I really do.
And I want to throw something back at you a little bit. Like, that happened with you and needing to branch out and find other streams of income and other things to do because the newspaper business had changed. But you're really good at this. like I listen to your show and I watch what you do and like I'm like, you could have been doing this from the beginning. And I mean, you're really very good at it. And that's one of those like things, like you look back at what happened with the newspaper business, like maybe, thank God that it did in some ways, because
it's like somebody stealing your cleats.
Yeah. I mean, like look at this talent that maybe you didn't even realize you had, and that puts you, because you are a fabulous cartoonist and thinker and editorial cartoonist, and the way you bring the ideas in. But you also have a pretty engaging personality and an ability to ask really good questions, and I'm glad that we've been given that, and I think a lot of people are. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Well, good Lord, let's just keep going on this for another 3 hours. That'd be fantastic.
Right. I haven't gotten that text message yet, so we'll I could keep going, but probably we gotta.
Well, to quote you, those are incredibly kind words. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it's fun because, like I said, we have so many interesting stories here. I'm just fascinated in a minute, and this kind of stuff just gives me a venue to be able to help have other people tell their stories. And I do appreciate you telling your story today. Just fascinating. I mean, I don't even feel like I scraped the surface. You've. But I think it's cool. I mean, anybody who has a dream, and you've been chasing your dream for 22 years, you've caught it, but then now you just allowed your dream to turn into a really wonderful life. And I think that's, at the end of the day, that's what dreams are about.
Well, I definitely could not put it any better than that. A good friend of mine, Eric Strassner, local singer-songwriter, really great songwriter, great guitar player too.
Very talented. Yeah,
very talented. I remember when I found out we were having our first kid, he said, thing is, you can have the worst day. You can have the worst stuff going on at work. You can be stuck trying to write a song and getting nowhere with it. You go home and see your kid and it just all melts away. And, as my kids get older, that just develops in a different way. And, sometimes I catch myself getting stressed out about something in my life or something with parenting. Mm-hmm. Then I just look at them and I think of how much they've made me laugh and how much my wife has made me laugh and how much the good times we've had and continue to have. And, it's a pretty good instant sort of recalibration of remembering what's important. So thanks to Eric for that tip long ago, because I do bring it back quite often.
That's the value of having good friends, and I'm glad I consider you one, even though we don't see each other much. It's still nice. It's still nice to cross paths with you. I'm going to read my little copy here, and then we'll sign off. How's that sound? The University of Mississippi Medical Center is the state's only academic medical center. Its education, research, and healthcare missions share the objectives of improving the health of the state's population and eliminating health disparities. It is located in Jackson. UMMC encompasses 7 health science schools, including medicine, nursing, health-related professions, dentistry, pharmacy, graduate schools, and population health. The medical center's health center enterprise includes the state's only level 1 trauma center, the only children's hospital, and organ and bone marrow transplant program. The medical center is also home to a telehealth center of excellence, 1 or 2 in the nation. And for more information, visit www.umc.edu. I want to thank UMC for sponsoring today's Mississippi Stories. And I want to thank Scott Albert Johnson for joining us and for creating wonderful music and giving us a little bit of insight into your creative process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marshall. Always a pleasure. Let's get together soon.
Sounds like a plan. Talk to you later, Scott. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Bye.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.